It's time for Side Scrollers with me, Stuttering Craig.
You decide when you lose, not other people.
And Blabs.
I like pickles.
And co-hosted by our friends from around the internet. Today with a one-on-one interview with LawTuber Nick Rekieta. And in this world of insanity, we are graciously supported by fans of common sense. And now, broadcasting from our homes, it's time for the #1 gaming and entertainment podcast on God's green earth. It's time for Side Scrollers.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, welcome on out to Side Scrollers on YouTube.com and Rumble.com and Twitch and Kick and Spotify and everywhere else on the internet. Good to see everybody. Hi, I'm Stuttering Craig. Welcome to the #1 video game and entertainment podcast on planet Earth. It's Side Scrollers. Man, we got a good one today. One-on-one interview as we tend to do on Thursdays. Got a bunch of great guests recently, including RGT85. We had, Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers on recently. We've had a lot of great folks, a lot of great conversations, because that is what this show is about. Just wading through the absolute insanity that is the internet and finding common sense in the video game and entertainment world. Today, we are joined by LawTuber Nick Rekieta will be joining us in just a second. I want to remind you guys, we are live over on Rumble at rumble.com/sidescrollers. Our goal, as always, is to hit 300 likes. So do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button every single episode. And let's see if we hit that membership goal today as well. Join the 53,000 plus who have subscribed to the channel. 10,000 in the last 10 days or so, or in the last 30 days or so. But hey, that'd be great. Let's get that 10K in 10 days. But look, today we're going to get into a real fun interview. I'm going to be honest, don't know a whole lot about this gentleman outside of he's made a name for himself in a very unique way, talking about legal cases. Let's introduce Nick Rekieta. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Hey, man. I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you. And I think we should just kind of start off as like, you are very polarizing. Like, people either really like you or they really hate you.
Yeah, I have that gift.
Why?
Really, I don't know.
What have you done, Nick? What did you do to the internet?
I'm the most lovable person I've ever met, and yet somehow people find me to be very prickly on occasion.
Well, what makes you so prickly?
I'm not sure. I think I'm honest, and I think that really bothers people. And the other is just, it's kind of a simple function of what I do. I comment on controversies that have definite sides. That's the nature of legal commentary, is you have two people, usually complete dirtbags, who are mad at each other over something that is usually irrelevant to everybody else. But because there are two people with a clear sort of delineation between them, you're going to talk about them, and people will assume, no matter what you say, that you're on one of the sides or the other, typically based on their own bias. So it doesn't matter if you are on a side or not, you are placed onto a side, usually because you're commenting in favor of one or the other at any moment, and that will determine how people perceive it. But law is an adversarial process, which means there's always one right party and one wrong party to some extent. So that just kind of sets up this sort of dynamic that you described. People are either going to like you or they're going to hate you because you're going to be commenting on the thing that they agree with or disagree with. And it really just kind of matters what the commentary is.
Right. Well, and you've had obviously, we'll get into it in a little bit, but obviously the Rittenhouse trial, the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial, you were big on those. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But I think the first question I have early on is am I going to get banned on YouTube by talking to you?
No. I am such a good boy. I have no strikes and no warnings on my YouTube channel. I don't know why there would be any suggestion anywhere that I would be dangerous. I have, of course, I'm joking a little bit. I have been thrown off of YouTube, but only for a short 3 days. And I was brought back. But that said, I on other people's shows, no, I tend to behave very well. So merely associating with me will not get you thrown off. There's plenty of stuff that could, if we get into it and you really want to talk about things, but I actually don't I don't get too YouTube controversial, in all honesty, because YouTube's fairly easy to navigate as long as you don't talk about certain subjects that they tend to tell you about. And other than that, and you can't call fat people fat, like, to their face. You can't do that. That's very bad. But usually the good news about that is it's usually hard to find their face around all the rest of them.
Wow, it's amazing how soft we've gotten as a society to where you can't call a fat guy fat, can't call a skinny guy skinny, you can't call a white guy white, you can't call a black girl black. Like it's pretty amazing how we are, or unless they call themselves that, then it's self-acceptance and wonderful.
Right. It's a weird YouTube policy that gets into the nature of like their harassment thing. And I've looked into it quite a bit because friends of mine and I have been struck for various harassment comments. And you're like, well, I didn't harass anybody. I just I was just talking about someone. And the policy gets into, if you make fun of a specific immutable characteristic about someone, and fatness is not immutable. I want to just point this out. Lots of fats have become skinny in their lives. But if you make fun of what's considered an immutable characteristic by YouTube about someone specifically over that characteristic, that is where they draw the line. You can make fun of fat people generally, but if you get Tess Holiday and you start just really going into how much cake she could consume, like that's where you start running into risks of that. And it's wild that the policy gets like that, or even the examples that they use, making fun of someone's teeth. Like,
right.
Well, they're just British. It's like not their fault.
Well, hold on, because people make fun of your nose all the time, right? Like, that's the one thing that I hear all the time is that as I've researched leading up to this, people say, "Why don't you talk about his big nose?"
Right? You can. It doesn't bother me. The big difference, of course, is in it's what you mentioned a bit ago, though. The softness of our society is derived from the softness of our people. And the softness of individuals now is that if someone makes fun of something about them, the first thing that they want to do is run and stop that person from saying what they're saying. And the fastest way to do that is to report them to the manager. And in this case, the manager's YouTube. So people make fun of my nose all the time, which so do I. It is also a superpower for me, so I don't bother with it too much. But I don't have any desire to silence anybody, so I don't run to YouTube to tell them to, please have the person stop.
Well, but if you wanted to, you could, hypothetically, right? You could have everyone banned if they're throwing that out there. I mean, it's kind of like holding the mirror up to them, right?
Yeah, and in theory you could, but of course YouTube does treat different things a little bit differently, right? Like we all know how that works. Like you can use one racial slur upon one type of person, then you can call me a crooked honky or whatever, and like it won't matter, no matter like how much that racial slur might offend me, which is tremendously. Everything offends me to the maximum. But the tools of silence are not evenly leveraged in the world. So
okay, well let's talk about that. Let's talk about how YouTube. Society has changed a lot in the last 3 years or so. I would say that some would say for the better part of a decade. I would say really since the year of our Lord 2020, things really kind of hit the fan, right? And people I think 2016 broke a lot of people. I think 2020 really broke a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, when I say I know, I see this. Yeah, everybody sees this on a day-to-day basis. People who have just been broken by society. But YouTube has tried to shift with the changes of society and the broken people. And a lot of broken people are working at YouTube and are making these decisions, which ultimately has a trickle-down effect on people who, as you said, speak truth, who call a spade or black or white.
Wow, now who's the racist?
I forgot that's a racist word. That's right. I guess if I was like, okay, then people would be like, you white supremacist. Remember when that was a thing with the okay sign? Anyway.
Oh yeah, that one was so funny to me. I'm like, wow, like that is just not in my repertoire of white supremacy. And I have a whole lot. Like I'm like very much a Golden Oreo fan. Like those are delicious. But I was like, the okay sign wasn't there.
So YouTube has tried to keep up with all this, and they've had a lot of lot of changing rules. So much so, even in the last few days, we've seen. I think it's like a terrorist organization thing that they're starting to slap on channels. Even like I think the Babylon Bee got one slapped on them for some sort of terrorist thing. I saw Steven Crowder got it for his leak the other day.
Yeah, that was amazing. Like just reporting on the news, and they're like, "Well, it's not the official news." It's like, well, actually, all of the bannings kind of suggested it really is the official thing. Like you just told us all it was super true. You're just mad that it came out through the source that hadn't sanitized it yet.
Well, what does that mean? What does official news mean? Like, what does that mean? Like NBC has it, ABC, Fox has it? No, I mean. You see tons of journalists that have no affiliation other than to themselves, breaking all sorts of news on a day-to-day basis.
Right, but I don't know if people know this. Maybe I assume you do, and you're being coy. But if you don't, do you remember when the independent news outlets like Short Ben Shapiro or Wild Steven Crowder would outdo major news outlets on every news story to the tune of something like 10 to 100 times the views every story?
Yes.
And it was like embarrassing. Then there's this point, and I think this was in 2016, if I remember right. I wasn't on YouTube yet, but there was a point where the views literally swapped. So you'd have a news story, a clip of the exact same story, and CNN would have, CNN would be on the bar grab way down here. They would have their viewers. And then you have Ben Shapiro, and he'd be doing 100 times the numbers. And then the next day, they literally just flopped. And what happened was YouTube implemented, and I'm not making this up, this is reported in a news article, YouTube implemented a trusted source algorithm. And trusted source was a moniker for official outlets of news and information based on expertise or professionalism within a given field. And that, of course, is applied to organizations who paid for the trusted source material. And if people want to know what that looks like in reality, if you know about my channel and my coverage, we're kind of skipping ahead, but you mentioned that I talked about Kyle Rittenhouse and Johnny Depp. Well, during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, I became by far the largest, most watched channel in relation to the coverage of the trial. There's a little outlet out there called Law and Crime, run by a giant cockbag. Can I say cockbag on the show?
Sure. I mean,
okay,
until
good.
YouTube tells us we can't.
So it's run by this giant cockbag. And Law and Crime broadcast trials. Now, I would utilize their footage and other people's footage to bring these publicly available hearings to people very conveniently for commentary. But they got really mad that I was way outperforming their coverage, and their coverage had no added value. It was literally just a live stream of the court proceedings, whereas I'm bringing on a bunch of experts and we're talking through what's going on. I don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself a facilitator, but these other lawyers are definitely experts and litigators who've done this for years. So we're adding a ton of value, and they got mad that we were outperforming them so thoroughly. When Johnny Depp came around, if you typed in Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard or Johnny Depp trial, their top 2 results were Law and Crime. And they still were adding no value. They had no particular marketing. But what they did was they paid for that trusted source status. And they did it through their multi-channel network. And when they got that, there was no competing with Law and Crime. Even the much more adept LawTube friends of mine like Emily Baker should have been slamming them as my friend would say, slamming them in the pisser on all of views. Law and Crime crushed all of us embarrassingly. And it's like, wait a minute, what changed here? Well, what changed was they got the algorithmic favor by literally buying it through an agreement with YouTube. And everybody has the opportunity to do that with the right multi-channel network, the right rep, and then the right algorithm-friendly content. You too can become a professional YouTuber with all of the expertise granted to you by YouTube and your agreement with them. But for guys like us, we don't have those sort of real resources to pump into it.
I don't know. I was taking notes. I was going to see what I was going to reach out to an MCN and see if they could get us signed up for all the gaming news around the internet and see if we can be the official source. That'd be great.
Without a hint of irony, that is possible with the right connections, the right amount of money. The question is, does that money in that given level of expertise net you sufficient views to overcome the price? And the reality, of course, to your question is there is no official news. News in the United States has long been recognized as a game of rapport and trust between author and between consumer. And the news used to be such a democratized thing with pamphlets and papers in every town, multiple of them. What we saw going through the late 19th, late 19th, early 20th century was this aggregation of news into a small number of quote unquote trusted powerhouses. And we saw this through Pulitzer, right? And Hughes aggregating news in New York into 2 papers versus 50 or 100. And then we saw that continue going into 5 news wires that we have now. The only thing that has changed is now you and I can get onto the entire world's radar just with a webcam and an internet connection and a microphone. And we can rival those news sources because we go back to this idea that people can learn who we are, learn our biases, and trust us rather than know that we're a name like CNN or Fox or NBC. And they are trying to bank on the officiality of their decades-long stranglehold on distribution just because it was so expensive. But now it's cheap. Right. And now we're getting back to this idea that anybody and everybody is a news source. We're all just as valid as anybody else. And I would say we're more trustworthy because you can learn exactly my opinions and biases by observing me. You can never learn an anonymous writer to Wall Street Journal what their biases are until or even when you do, the next writer will have a different set. And so you can't actually trust their opinions as simply as you can trust mine. Because you can maybe trust me to be wrong on a subject. And then you can watch the coverage and go, I know this guy's an idiot, so I know he's wrong. But I can trust that he's going to be reliably wrong. And then I can gauge my opinions based on my knowledge of his skill, his bias, his experience, all of that stuff. Right. And that's the democratization of news. But official news is what they're trying to implement. You got a license to report that story, and it's insane that that exists. But they're companies trying to make it.
What are your thoughts on? I think there's a major tipping point. So just from your info, I have a background in journalism. I have a degree in journalism. I never used that degree. I started online a long time and just talking about video games. I've been doing it for a long time. But my training was in fair and balanced journalism, always getting both sides of the story. So seeing how things have flipped over the last, for a long time, it's shocking to me. And having been in newsrooms and seeing slants being put towards a certain story. Yeah, but I've seen that stuff. I think a lot of this started potentially. My theory is that when the fairness doctrine was with Reagan, when that I think that was a major tipping point in 87 when that was flipped.
100%. And of course, the fairness doctrine is a result of what should be any podcaster's one of their personal heroes is Rush Limbaugh. Right? Like Rush Limbaugh, if I've got my timeline right, and I think I do, Rush comes out of the gate and he makes conservative talk radio the default talk radio because he was a powerful orator with a gift from God, right? Like he's Rush. Right. And he creates this thing through raw charisma and persona, but also a voice of people who feel underrepresented. And because the left, the liberal side had already kind of taken mass media from the television. And he comes out and he creates talk radio, and he creates it by creating conservative talk radio. And they're getting so outcompeted so badly by guys like Rush, and then guys like Don Imus and stuff like that would come along. And they have to create a doctrine that says, well, if you're going to have a conservative talk show, you have to give an equal amount of air to someone of a different opinion. And it's like, that was the biggest admission of defeat that you could possibly see. And they nakedly said it. And so that's why you had Hannity and Combs come out, right? Because if Sean Hannity, and they have to balance him with this weird guy, I think Alan Combs was his name, where they're like, here's your station appointed liberal to run your show with, so that we can We don't have to run 2 shows for 3 hours each. We just run one show with a balanced take. But yeah, forcing balance into perspective is to completely sanitize the news or opinion segment of anything. And it's great to see that happen. But yeah, that was the fairness doctrine is this wonderful area where they really did have to do that. And then of course it applied to political candidates as well. If you're going to cover a particular candidate or give them time, you have to give their competition time. It's like, well, why should that ever have to be a thing? Why should you not have to either pay to get onto a broadcast program like everybody else, or have the broadcast channel decide it is worth their investment to bring you on for free? Like, that should be the thing you earn, not that some government decides someone needs to give to you.
That's really interesting, because the idea of providing people with there's no way that could ever work today with today's. I mean, because once again, what is a news outlet? It's a guy with a YouTube channel, right? And there's no way that you could provide fair and balanced reporting as much as you try, because ultimately the audience will decide what, the audience will always take their slant and decide, well, you slant more to the left, you slant more to the right, you're a crazy communist, no, you're a right-wing bigot, blah 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 blah, right? The audience will all, and like the same thing has happened to you, where you as you said earlier, you've just made very basic black and white statements about a case, and ultimately then you get lumped into a certain a certain group.
Yeah, all the time.
Talk about man, there's been a societal change in the last big part of it, and tribes have become a very, very, I mean, you can go back, with caveman days, there was tribes, right? And then there's, Native American tribes, whatever. But now it seems like we're more tribal than we've ever been. And if you've, if you look online, you see people may be in tribes, they may not even be real people. And I think that's the craziest thing about it. You're fighting with people in a tribe that aren't even real people, they're bots. Talk about like the information warfare attached that is happening right here, because I think that's something that everybody knows it's happening, but only few people want to talk about it. The information warfare that's happening, because people are, World War III, whatever. I think there's a bigger, there's always been a fight on information, but now it's just harder to control it.
Yeah. One last thing on the last subject, though, because you mentioned tribes and you mentioned the fairness doctrine and how it can't really work today. And while I agree with you, that's not for a lack of trying. If you've seen what Canada is attempting to do to guys like us, right? Any and every podcast is required, or is attempting to be required, to dedicate a certain amount of broadcast time to Indigenous peoples groups in Canada. And it's like, wait, what? Like, if you want to talk about Canadian issues, you now have to talk about Eskimos? Like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
I just love the idea of like someone in there talking about video games, and they're like, listen, the new Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be great, but let's take a second and learn from Great Lone Yellow Feather about the Indigenous tribes. I just think that's just the funniest thing. Just the hard cut out of it, and that's how I would handle it if I was doing anything in Canada. I would just make a mockery out of it.
Yeah, it's like Grand Theft Auto 6 has been released, and what we're waiting for, of course, is the eagerly anticipated Igloo mod, which will pay homage to your Canadian brethren, the Indigenous peoples. Spearfishing will be added to the golf section. Like, it's insane to think that that's what they're pushing for, but it is. They're pushing for that analog in news, and if they can do it in news and information, they can do it in entertainment, and they will. But onto the tribalism topic. I mean, tribalism in information is, of course, everywhere, and it just comes into. I want to apologize for tribalism a little bit, because in the same way I'll apologize for our garbage two-party system in American politics. This is just the economics of your scarce resource, which is your attention and your allegiance to ideas and concepts. We have a limited amount of bandwidth to give towards topics that don't involve our survival. And I mean our survival very practically. Earn money, buy shelter, buy clothing, buy food, find someone to insert your parts into, right? Like these are the things that we have to do. And then all of our other time is then very limited and then dedicated to some sort of self-fulfillment or information education. And so as with Republicans and Democrats, like, well, let me condense all these topics into these main camps, which cover the broadest spectrum of two halves of America. The same way with tribalism in any other information, Israel and Palestine, like most people don't have enough time to really invest into learning about that area of the world at a deep enough level to make a highly informed decision. But what they can do is go, I have these kind of principles in common with this group of people, and this is where that tribe is going to land on the issue. And you reduce it in essence to two sides of everything, because that is the most efficient way to spend your time and to make your decisions without burning yourself ragged over every single issue that comes up. So tribalism is really a product of economics and the distilled expenditure of that scarce resource of our time and attention. With that, it's still garbage. It doesn't make it good. It just explains why we are so apt to do it. But tribalism is this plague upon the information discussion or war, as you put it, where we don't make our decisions. We don't make our assessments and our judgments based on the actual characteristics of things most often. And it's mostly because we don't care that much. And a great place to see that right now in a not so serious capacity is within, I know this is going to piss people off, so I apologize very much. And you're now not going on a government list. You're going on a worse one. It's within the independent comics community here on YouTube and the commentator stuff.
Listen, I gotta be honest. I don't know. I don't know shit about that. Like we talk about a lot of stuff on the channel, right? We talk about gaming, news, entertainment, culture, pretty much every day, right? But if there's one thing that I like, I try to avoid drama as much as I possibly can, right? My life is, what I do is I point out stupidity, right? That's what I do. Is that's what I've always done. It's just you look and you laugh at stupidity. And what I found specifically with this show is that this show originally originated in 2006, and I brought it back this year. And the same thing holds true then, is that when you laugh and you point at things that are stupid, people like to laugh and point at things that are stupid with you, right? So, but
you point and laugh at the wrong thing,
right.
And they're like, "Well, how dare you point and laugh?" It's like, that's what I've been doing the whole time.
Right. But yeah, the tribalism aspect of but you see it in video games too. We see people are upset about whether it's a Sony thing or a Nintendo thing. There's these tribes that people go into. You talk about something that doesn't matter. People who are so ingrained with their devotion to a multi-global national giant company like Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, where they don't want to even hear it if you have something bad to say about this company, because these companies, this is the companies that people have they've staked they put their flag in the ground. I am a Sony fan. I am a Nintendo fan, and fuck you if you have anything bad to say about Shigeru Miyamoto or Mario or Zelda or whatever.
I have to protect this multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation with everything I have, because how will they do it without me? It's an amazing product. I love the console wars, because I'm like, why do you care? Just buy both. Like, how dare you suggest that? It's like they're out for 10 straight years per generation. Like, you can scrape together the money to buy both eventually and not really worry about it. Even if you're very limited means, people end up doing that, of course, but they'll bitch about it the whole time. They're like, no, I'm a Sony guy. God, I really want to play the new Bethesda game, though. Like, okay, well, just I don't know, steal an Xbox from someone else. Then I don't care.
You can do that in a lot of cities today and get away with it. It's okay,
right? Just ride your bike into Walmart or whatever, kick open the glass, grab the Xbox. You could probably grab a couple games before you hit that $900 limit. Yeah,
it'd be great. And get home free. Okay, well, let's talk about this. Talk about money for a minute. You have been very public, and you've had a lot of success on YouTube. You are one of the top grossing super chat channels on YouTube. Why do you think that is? Is it just the size of your audience? Are you saying things that resonate with people?
Like, no, I always punched well above my weight on that topic, and it was a point of soreness and contention for me, because while I loved that aspect of of being able to say, look at this thing that I've done, like there's a list that is the top in the world of something and I'm on it. That's cool. Because I'm just a jerk in the middle of Minnesota.
Right.
But I hate taking money from people when I could take it from a company. You know what I mean? Not like as a paycheck, but first of all, let me dispel the secret for all of you. The highest super chat earners in the world, like their aggregate super chat amounts, which are pretty massive right now, over the life of their channels, there are non-live channels that make that monthly, that make that total amount monthly. So when you see like Timcast, you're like, oh my God, like he's got to be pushing $2 million in total super chats. That's an embarrassingly small amount for some YouTube channels and how much they make per month. They're not even anywhere near the top income earners on YouTube. So don't get too flustered with it. But that's the thing that I'm talking about. Like I would rather generate sufficient ad revenue to never have to take a super chat again, or generate, sponsorship revenue to never have to take those super chats, because while I love people's ability to participate in shows, I want that to be a voluntary thing that people do because they want to. And I don't want it to be like something where we're all trying to come up with that idea of how do we generate revenue? Like, how do we incentivize participation in the show? And it's a fun, cool twist element to it, but I would rather take my money from someone who has millions and millions of dollars than someone who has to look at that $20 and go, I would hesitate to spend this $20 in any other place. It was always a point of contention for me in that, in sort of the function of it. But I think the reason that I became so successful with super chats had to do with the niche areas that I ended up talking about and people's willingness within those niche areas to divorce themselves from income for their hobbies. And it wasn't intentionally done this way. It was kind of a reflection of how it happened, but specifically things like comic books, anime. And we see this, of course, in the creator community, right? Like we were talking a little bit ago about independent comics. I mean, Alpha Core just launched from Eric July in the Rippaverse, and you saw people posting their pre-orders of this book, multiple cover books that they're buying. And these guys are waking up one day and they're going, here is Alpha Core #1. I'm going to buy the complete package of signed covers, right? Maybe even graded. And they're dropping $700 on one issue of a comic book. Where else do you see this? I mean, you see it in hobby communities primarily. Comic books, anime, sports, places where people will divorce themselves of massive amount of money in service to their hobby. If you're commenting in those communities and you're commenting in a way that comports with people's ideas, they're conditioned to divorce themselves of income, and they will do it at a rate that is shocking, frankly. And one of the biggest ones is anime. And you find this with VTubers, and VTubers are the top income earners across the super chat board by a mile. They blow guys like Timcast or me or Fresh and Fit way out of the water. And the reason they're so successful, in my opinion, has a lot to do with the conditioning of otakus, no matter where they're found, of giving their money into this idea of their anime waifu, to put it like blithely, but really just into their hobby. They, when I was growing up with anime, my friends would import VHS tapes, usually it would go from Japan to Germany to a service that would fan sub. They'd run it through like a computer, and that would add subtitles to the thing that was not translated into English anywhere else. And then you buy it. So you're spending like $80 on a movie, which everybody else is spending $20 on a movie.
Mm-hmm.
That conditioning has persisted. And if you go to any anime convention, you'll see people spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on statues and figurines, and they just litter their desks and shelves with them. And you're like, that shelf is like $25,000 of anime tits. Like, that's amazing, dude. How'd you even afford that? Well, if you comment in those communities and in those hobbies, you'll find people willing to do the same for your commentary. And so I think that was a big part of it. I covered the Vic Mignogna case. I covered the lawsuits around Comicsgate and Richard Meyer and Mark Wade, and the disputes that Ethan Van Sciver got into with guys like Vox Day. And just offering that commentary there, people were willing to invest in me in the same way they invested in other aspects of their hobby. And that was a massive portion of it. Then, of course, the big popularity of things like Kyle Rittenhouse and Johnny Depp, where your show becomes 80,000 live viewers. It's math at that point. Like, if you have 80,000 people watching, super chats are going to come in by function of that volume. So,
man, I also think that there is for some people in particular, and like I said, I don't know a whole lot about, I think what Eric has done is spectacular in that he's provided an alternative. And I think in that situation in particular, it's a counterculture movement. It's the idea of people are behind it because of, it may be a great product, it may not, but at the end of the day, people like the idea of having an alternative, which I think is the bigger message for that stuff. But and I think that same goes for you as well. People like the alternative of not having corporate lawyer guy from corporate channel talk about things. They know that they're going to get you an authentic voice, and it's an alternative. So yeah, it's interesting. Let's actually take a step back and go before YouTube, right? Before YouTube, what'd you do? Obviously, lawyer. Yes.
Yeah, I was
before that. What I saw you on your LinkedIn, which I guess it's your LinkedIn. I don't know. It says you worked at Wells Fargo. What was that like?
Oh, that was hilarious. So yeah, I was a lawyer for a couple years. Had my own practice. I have never tried to oversell my legal experience. Solo practitioner in a very small town in a very small county. Our county has 50,000 people in it, and I typically represented small time criminal defendants, and then I did things like contract drafting and review, entity formation. I'd help people form 501c3 charities, stuff like that. But really basic stuff, and not a ton of it because it's a nightmare to do. It takes a huge amount of time, and chasing down money from people is the worst thing that you could ever have to do as a lawyer, because these people are in the worst situations of their lives. Often they're of modest to average means. And then you have to come up and be like, well, my time is worth X amount of dollars because I have to keep a door open and I need you to pay me. And they're like, well, I can't. Right. Like, well, please, what do you do? Right. So that part's a nightmare. Prior to that, though, yeah, I worked in various areas of banking, finance, investment, lending. Wells Fargo, you asked about, was just a year at the shittiest year of my entire life as a personal banker at Wells Fargo. How was it? It was.
Yeah. What is it like being a personal banker?
It's a salesman. That's what you are. You're a salesman. They try to tell you that it's not. You're not a salesman at all. But you are. Your job is to sell a checking account, a savings account, a debit card, a credit card, a personal line of credit to secure an overdraft protection on the checking, and then hopefully a home equity line and maybe even a mortgage or something like that. And the motto at the time was go for great, GR8, which the idea is that you got any customer into 8 specific products or services of Wells Fargo. And it became exceedingly difficult then to transition your banking to another institution because of these 8 different lines that you had. So that was the behind the scenes marketing. And when I got this job, by the way, I walked into the interview. I was like an hour late to my interview because I went to the wrong building in downtown Minneapolis and whatever. And I walked in and they're like, so, and I'm like, well, I'm an hour late, so I assume I'm not getting this job. And they're like, well, just talk to us. I'm like, okay. And they're
like, well, you look nice. You came in and you showed up. That's important, you know.
The good news was, like, I could prove I was there an hour before. I was just in the wrong location because it was actually pretty ambiguous as to where I was supposed to be. Because the Wells Fargo has multiple buildings in downtown Minneapolis and multiple different floors. And I think I even had a typo on like where I was supposed to meet. And so I was at the place that it said, and I could show that. And they actually had to call the people I was supposed to be interviewing with and find out where I was supposed to go. But it was a mess. But I'm like, wow, this is a disaster. But okay. But I go in with a jovial attitude to everything. And then I'm just honest about things, which really just gets to people. But I was like, well, I don't know how this is going to go. And they start describing the job, and it was this forward hire personal banker program was a new thing. I think this was the 4th class or the 5th class that they had done, and essentially is a 6-week program where you go downtown Minneapolis to a classroom setting and take a course on how to be a personal banker in a class of like 30 or 40 people. And rather than place people individually in these banks and have them kind of intern with another banker, they wanted a sort of centralized version of training. So they're like, that's what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, cool. But this is sounding kind of like a sales job. And I'm going to warn you guys, I am not a good salesman. I'm actually the worst salesman you will ever meet. And I guarantee you, if you hire me for a sales job, I will fail. And they're like, well, I mean, and I'm like, no, I'm telling you right now, I will fail at being a salesman. There is no way I will sell a product that I don't believe in. And you guys are banking products. I'm not going to do this and succeed. I will fail your metrics. If you have goals or whatever, I will not meet them. So do not hire me. Of course, these dumbasses hire me immediately.
Right.
And they put me in the banking program. They're like, we can fix her. No, you can't fix her, guys. You can't do it.
But that's ultimately why you were there for only a year. Was it you? Did you make that decision, or did they make that decision?
I did. Now, again, I'm honest. I was probably going to not make that decision myself very soon. But thank God, a friend of mine who I worked with, he was another banker. He was actually a good banker. But he went to go work at a company called Thrivent Financial in the back office, which I didn't want to be in retail banking. I don't want to be in retail anything. I don't want to be out front selling a product, shilling a product, helping a whiny customer. I don't want to do that. I want to, I'm good at systems. I'm good at data management. I'm good at strategizing. I'm good at creative solutions to problems. And those don't happen on the retail side. So he got a position in brokerage services at Thrivent Financial. Talked to the manager, said he knew a guy who'd probably be really good in that position. And then he got me the interview and I was hired. And so I said sayonara to Wells Fargo. But I was probably months away from being asked to do something else. Because Wells, they did have this great idea where it's like, we want to get you into the thing that you're good at. I'm like, then why do you start me in the thing I'm not good at and demand I become good at that to only go into the thing I was already good at? That was their strategy. Well, once you get success as a banker, you can go do something else that doesn't involve sales. Like this is not logical. So they had this desire to get me out of sales in general, but they wouldn't do it until I hit goals at a certain metric. And I just was completely demotivated.
Right. So you move on, you have
Mm-hmm.
another job, and then you become a lawyer. And we talked about what you did in a small town and such. Did you ever, and I'm just going based off of what I've read online. There's rumor that you never won a case. Is that true?
Yeah, no, it's not true at all. It's funny. So again, I do not want to misrepresent anything about me. You can publicly look up a lot of the things I have done in court, because any of the criminal stuff is available online. I have never had to take a case to jury trial, thank God. I have taken cases to trial. There are family law and custody issues that go through the trial process, but just with a judge, because you don't put custody and family law cases in front of a jury. You know what would happen if you put family law in front of a jury is the woman would always win. And right now, the woman only wins like 80% of the time. So we wouldn't want to close that 20% gap on total success by putting it in front of the jury. But that's what would happen. So they try and remove that element a little bit. But no, I've taken custody cases, and I've taken child support cases, and I've taken child protection cases to trial, and won all of them handily. And I've taken a couple landlord renter issues to trial and won them. Those are, again, these were non-jury trials at the time. But that's part of it. The other part is in criminal defense, a win is very different than a victory. A win in criminal defense is getting some goal of your client achieved. Because the reality of criminal defense is if you're going to court, there's a 98% chance you're guilty. So what you find is most people will plea out. Negotiating that plea deal is a critical aspect of it. And sometimes that plea deal is the victory. If you keep your client out of jail, a lot of times that's the win, right? Like, right. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want a felony on my record. So you get a felony theft pled down to a misdemeanor theft, and you get 6 months of probation rather than spending a year and 2 months in prison, right? Like that's a great outcome for a client. And then other times you get the case dismissed, or you get some sort of deferred adjudication that ends up with a dismissal later on, and those are great outcomes as well. But yeah, like it's fun to say. Nick has never won a case, or Nick has never been those are all completely untrue, but I don't represent that I've done it a million times, because I haven't. That was not the main income driver for my business. It's fun to fight the government, but when you live in a small town and you're representing petty drug dealers and stuff like that, you're not making a ton of money. So the most of the income that I had was from specific business clients that I would write all their contracts for. I'd review contractual agreements for. I would advise them on legal matters, for my hourly rate, and that pays the bills. While the other stuff is what you do to either try and build up that business, or because it's fun and fulfilling, or because someone just needs the damn help.
Right. And I think there's a lot of people who, when they hear lawyer, they think of Gordon Bombay and the Mighty Ducks, wheeling and dealing with the judge and all that stuff. But a lot, many lawyers never actually go to court at all. They are in an office somewhere talking about how to strategize to not go to court.
Yeah, it's there's that. There's also just research attorneys who their entire job is to put together either resources for a drafting attorney, or they are the researcher and drafter, and they prepare documents, and then a litigator comes in and makes the arguments, because a litigator is charismatic and very good at thinking on their feet, identifying things that their opponents are saying, and then attacking those on cross-examination, whatever they may be up to. Or they just have a lot of experience in front of a judge, and that judge is going to recognize their face, and that alone can be a great advantage. So, there's a ton of attorneys who will never practice in a courtroom. There are a ton of attorneys who will never practice law at all, because just the degree, the law school degree, whether you then get licensed as a lawyer or not, is valuable in how you categorize, organize, synthesize information. That is a useful skill across every industry, finding people who can quickly look at a lot of data and condense it down into some key ideas, and then deliver a persuasive concept around that to someone else. Very useful, right? Like, you can think of how that would be great in every industry if you take a moment. So, I don't care. Like, people will say what they want. You can fight the internet's opinion, or you can just let them have it. Typically, the second one is the more efficient and useful option, because the first one, once someone on the internet makes an opinion about you, there's nothing you can really do to change it. Like they'll have to change it on their own.
Right. So what do you say to people who are like, Nick's changed, his content's changed? Like they formed that opinion about you. Well, what got them to that opinion? Why do people say, well, Nick Rekieta is not what he used to be?
Well, they're probably right. I don't know. What do you say to the you've changed things? Like, well, I mean, I guess it's your perspective on what it is. Do I talk about comics and anime as much? No, way less. I'm not covering any cases in those areas. So certainly that has changed. The subject matter I've covered has changed. If you found me by watching me cover live trials, when I'm covering Rittenhouse and Johnny Depp, I'm putting in between 12 and 17 hours a day, 5 days a week for weeks and weeks at a time. I can't do that most of the time. Even when I would like to, and usually if there is a trial that it has sufficient level of popularity, it would be very profitable personally for me to do that. But I just can't, man. I got 5 kids. I got a wife. We have tons of family obligations and events that we go to. I teach at our homeschool co-op. All of those things get pushed to the side when there's a trial. So for me, like if that's what you found me doing, where I'm spending 80 hours a week streaming, well, and then you come in, you're like, why is he only doing 4 shows this week? It's like because I don't want to kill myself yet. And I don't want to start wanting to kill myself either. So maybe I've changed in that way. And then there's this other aspect where people imposed upon me a set of values because I am married. I've been married for 19 years. And that my wife and I are like that's it. We don't have prior major relationships really. We have 5 children. We homeschool them, and we're Christian. People decided then that meant we were a specific brand of Christianity. And then they will identify various opinions I've had on certain things and say they are definitely this. And then if you violate that image, you're guilty of some sort of hypocrisy, whether or not you actually possess that opinion. People decided that you did. And so then, but again, what do you do? Like change it. And then the worst part about that is when people take a story or a concept and then they add information to it for whatever reason. They create a fiction based on a reality, and then they've determined that fiction is grounds for you having violated something else. There's a whole bunch of funny stuff about me that is just wildly untrue, and people say that is the source of the hypocrisy of me betraying some values. It's like, but guys, like it didn't actually happen.
Well, so what are some of those things that people say about you that are untrue?
Well, apparently I am a swinger, I guess. And they don't mean with like a golf club. I guess that means that I go out and sleep around consensually outside of my marriage, which is not true at all.
How did they get that? Where did that come from?
Now, while I'm not a swinger, I have done a bunch of hilarious stuff in my life, fun things, in my opinion, that do actually kind of push the boundaries of what people are comfortable with. Like for example, when I go out to a bar or a club, I will buy drinks for numerous people. Like I'm out having fun. I'll buy a bunch of drinks for people, and I'll often just walk away, or I'll talk to them. And sometimes that involves meeting people who try to pick you up and take you home. And I don't go home with anybody other than my wife because, well, we're monogamous, like, and we always have been. But that leads people to the idea that maybe we're not, or something. Or I have talked about attending a nude beach, for example, and I think it's actually an activity that a lot of people would benefit from when you find out how unsexual it is. But because of that, people start to draw conclusions about what goes on at those places. And it's like, guys, I'm sharing a fun story with you that was so far out of my comfort zone. But then I realized that, that it's really interesting what being around a bunch of other naked people is when it's all consensual, because you realize that like maybe your body dysmorphia issues or your insecurities about yourself can vanish in the wake of everyone's averageness.
Well, I'll say this. I went to Jamaica, and right next to where we stayed, there was a nude beach. And
oh yeah,
if you want to feel good about yourself, you just look over at that nude beach. and realize how good you truly have it. No matter how bad you think you look, you just look over there and go like, no, you know what? Not that bad.
And that was honestly a big portion of the story, was that exact sentiment. It's like you're there and you look around and you're like, well, all these people are fat and ugly. Like, they seem happy. What am I worried about? And it was amazingly comforting, like without a hint of irony. It was amazingly comforting to go through that. And I think a lot of people, when you see people discussing relationships and male-female dynamics online, you get these wild caricatures of things. And you know that the people behind the screen watching are not fitting into these caricatures, because they're not even real. They're not real for the people talking. They're not real for the examples given. And so you know the person there is statistically average, right? Like that's the obvious assumption. And you're like, well, you don't need to look at the dynamics of relationships through the lens of celebrity. You don't need to look at the dynamics of relationships through the lens of Instagram models, because that's not reality. The reality is you. And if you go out and find people engaged in all levels of relationship, from the one night stand to the literal sex on the beach to the long-term marriage, and you look around and you're like, no, these people are actually just really similar to me on balance. I'm telling you, it is a massive change in your confidence and your perspective on those dynamics. And I think putting us all behind screens and putting these arbiters of male and female realities, people like Pearl or Fresh and Fit or the whatever podcast, they're defining male and female dynamics for a huge audience. And you're like, but they're picking up ludicrous examples that don't reflect reality at all. But then people are soaking it up as if they do. And that to me is wild. And it's literally go out and touch grass, except in this case, the grass is sand and it's covered in stinky people. Like, go do it. It's funny.
Well,
but yeah,
I think there's a lot of, and I want to continue with the untrue statements in a second, but I think there's a lot of truth in what you said, because when you go out and you go on, let's say you go on X, right? And you post something on X, or you see what's trending on X, and you're like, oh my God, the world is burning. And then you walk outside and you go have a dinner with your family, you go out or whatever, and you just go out to a place that has, I don't know, let's say you go to a ball game or whatever, and there's 10,000 people around. You're like, no, these are just regular people. Everything's fine. The world is fine. Everything is good, for the most part. It's not Twitter. It's not Facebook. The world is not burning, at least what I'm seeing right now. Now, maybe behind the scenes, but for the most part, people are pretty fucking normal, and that's a good thing. You just see the extremes on these podcasts and stuff. Right.
I saw, real quick on that,
on that
exact, I saw a meme. It was some libertarian guy. I don't remember his name, but it's like somewhere out there, there's a guy living next to a rock and he doesn't have a phone. He has no idea how scared he's supposed to be.
Right.
It's a perfect example, because we get in our bubbles and we go, and you go out into public. And this is why I love going out to like bars and clubs and stuff with my wife. And we go out and we talk to people and just kind of like figure out what these people who are out like drinking and dancing are thinking about and talking about. And I tell you what, it isn't most of the time. It's not like Trump. It's not January 6th. It's not this. And you can say, oh, they're uninformed or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, they are, but like they also don't have time to care about that. Their life is a different character and category. And
how am I going to pay for my mortgage? What's happening this Saturday with my kids' softball game? What do I need to bring for my elementary school? For the kids' teacher appreciation day. It's all that stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, so back to where were we going next?
We were talking about. We're talking about things people say about you online that are not true. And for the record, when you say you go out to clubs with your family, these are not swingers clubs, right? Just need to be very clear.
Yeah, just like a dance club in a city or a bar. Like they're just places where people go. That's it. So,
that may or may not have swingers at them.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, the funny thing about rumors about that sort of life is you start to meet people who are in that live. Like they reach out to you, or they'll come out to you or whatever, not in a gross way, right? Not in like a, hey, not that way, but like, they're just like, hey, like, are you involved in this? Like, cause I can tell you about it. And you know how it goes. Like when you talk about video games, surprising people reach out to you to talk to you about video games. And you're like, like, how did you even know I exist? Right? Like you were a developer, you're whatever. In the same way that works in every other thing. And as you meet these people, you will be shocked to find out where they are. You're worried about a swingers club. I mean, you are just as likely to encounter swingers in your churches, your grocery stores, everywhere else. They're pretty discreet people. And we'll talk about them as if they're like animals in a documentary. Right. They're pretty discreet people, but I mean, it is a place where they go away from real life to engage in this activity that other people judge them pretty heavily for, but they're everywhere. It's not like there's a checkbox where you're like, I know that this place will have them and this place won't. No, the places you expect that they're not are probably where they're most present. And it's funny to me to see that after, like, I had never met anybody who was a swinger until like the rumors and shit started. And then I start finding out people who are, and I'm like, wow, that's a surprise. But okay, I guess that explains your wall art. No, that's a joke. But it's like you find it and you're like, well, you seem kind of normal. Like you expect them to be weirdos, but they're normal, which is the whole thing about it. That's what I think would drive most people the most crazy, is if you find out who people are, and you realize that it's your neighbor or your doctor or your or that person who runs a program at your church or leads a Bible study. Like,
say there's immense irony though. There is immense irony of the guy at church sharing his wife with another dude. You know, like I'm just saying, like it's there's a lot of irony.
But
there.
They do, man. Like, and they probably do it numbers that would shock people.
Not the best churchgoer, I would imagine. Not the best believer.
Well, but who is, right?
Yeah, like, yeah. We're all shitheads.
It's an interesting topic, not on the swinger thing, but just the churches and churchgoers' ability to categorize sin as if there's a hierarchy of it and that their sin is somehow less bad than someone else's. And it's like, well, that's not really in there. Like, that's not really in the Bible. Like, your desire to eat 37 pies a day is no different than someone's sexual deviancy in the eyes of sin. Like, sin is sin. The wages of it is all
gluttony.
Death.
All gluttony. Yeah.
So it's funny that that's how it goes, but it is how it goes. I mean, don't get me wrong. But it's funny that is the thing that's bothered me long before, like the swinging issue, as you start to examine like the church approach to gay marriage, for example, and you ask for examples of why one group of people living in sin is particularly worse than another group of people who openly live in sin, like divorcees. If you divorce someone and then marry someone else, you're an adulterer. Like that's the reality. I hate to break that to you. That's why Catholics have annulment, because they wanted to get around that whole divorce debacle. It's like, well, if it's bad enough, we'll just say it never happened, and then you're not an adulterer now. But if you just divorced your first wife and married another wife, you're now, well, you've since it's kind of patriarchal, you made her into an adulterer or an adulteress. So now she's a sinner forever. And it's wild though. Like, that is perfectly acceptable in the Christian faith, to divorce and then to remarry, which is sin. Make no mistake. It's clearly laid out as sin. Christ himself calls it sin. And yet, this other person living in sin is categorically worse and worthy of derision and exile from church communities. And it's like, how do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I think the sooner everybody can come to the conclusion that we're all a little messed up and we all have our faults, like the sooner everybody can get over themselves, right?
You'd hope.
You'd hope so. That's just wishful thinking, and it'll never happen. All right, let's go on to kind of your rise to prominence. Obviously, I mean, when I say rise to prominence, rise to the point to where this is what you're doing full time now. You're a law. Do you like the phrase law tuber?
No, I hate it.
Okay. then what? How do you identify, Nick?
As an asshole.
Okay. So
Like,
you're making a living as an asshole, right? How do you
Yeah.
get from lawyer guy to making a living as an asshole on YouTube?
So it started with an accident. That's the best part, because it was not a planned thing at all. But I was a fan of this podcast called The Biggest Problem in the Universe, not the current version, but the original version, which is two guys, Dick Masterson and Maddox, who are old internet satirists. They got together. They had this podcast. It ran for 2 years. It's a really good podcast, honestly. The dynamic between them was great. It was a perfect tension. But it ends after 106 episodes, completely without explanation. And they each start their own show. And Dick eventually starts talking about like what happened, why they broke up, and why they're no longer gay lovers. And Maddox ends up suing Dick for somewhere between $20 and $400 million. It's hard to actually tell because the lawsuit was so poorly written. But I'm sitting there on my couch, and my wife was making me watch something on TV, and I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I see that this lawsuit has been filed, and everybody's like freaking out because it's a lawsuit, so it's kind of like official or whatever. And they're like, "Holy hell!" And I start reading this thing. I get about 10 pages in. I'm like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever read. Like, this is a terrible legal document." It's like, you know what I'm going to do? I was in the Dick Show Facebook group, and people knew I was a lawyer in there, and I had a reputation for getting banned from Facebook for using the F slur liberally. But that being said, I was like, I'm going to drink some whiskey and I'm going to read through this lawsuit and explain to people, just translate what's going on. Like, what do these terms mean? What do they have to do? And so I did that in some hilariously bad initial attempts at recording, but I was just going to post it to Facebook within the Facebook group. But back then, Facebook didn't let you post videos over 15 minutes as a normal person. You could get there, but you couldn't just do it from the outset. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just post this to this YouTube channel that I have, that I'd only had a YouTube channel to upload some things so I could share them like in other places, like Diablo 3 speedruns or something. But yeah, so I upload the video to YouTube, and a bunch of people ended up watching it. A bunch of people for a first video. It was like 10,000 people or something. And they're like, dude, you should do this all the time. Drink whiskey and talk about law. And I was like, all right, I'll do it more. And so then I did. And then live streaming became this option. Superchats were created. And I got to this point where I said, hey, actually, if I do this full time, there's a level where if I get here in money, I could decide to do this full time, 40 hours a week or whatever it is. And then with the right amount of success, I could possibly replace my income completely, especially if I was able to close down my office and get rid of expenses. And so I hit that level fairly quickly. I guess I started in November of 2017. And then I decided in September of 2018 that I could go full time. And so I did. And then the rest is history after that. I mean, it took a while to wrap up my existing legal work because you can't just drop out of everything. You still have clients. It took, I think, 2 full years to finish up the last things. But then once I did, then it's been just YouTube, but it was really just YouTube long before that. Those are just tied up loose ends. And it's been a lot of fun, but the measure was, can I possibly replace my income? And then, of course, by 2019, I was far exceeding any income I could even come close to making as a small town attorney. So it was great.
So you grow, you make that income. Then the 2020 happens. You have the Kyle Rittenhouse case. That's where you really kind of take the next, the giant leap forward. You're, as you said, you're watching the trial, you're going through, you're watching all that stuff. Talk about, like, did you know that was going to be big when you said, hey, I'm going to cover this?
No, actually, I had no idea. I just knew that when the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff happened, I looked at it and I was like, well, that looks like a clear case of self-defense. But I figured the district attorney would lie and distort the facts in their criminal complaint and try and make a case out of it. And then they wrote their complaint, and I was like, well, that complaint reads like a self-defense case, which is weird. that they would write it down so blatantly. And then they went through with the charges. And I really wanted to do this with the Chauvin case. But the Chauvin opening statements happened on the day I started driving down my whole family to Florida to visit my parents. And so I missed kind of the opening statements of the Chauvin trial. And then I was down in Florida for something like a week or 10 days. And I was just not able to spend all day while visiting with my family covering that trial. So I could kind of follow it in the evenings, but I couldn't do it daily. So when Rittenhouse came around, I was like, I am clearing my schedule and I'm going to watch every minute of this damn trial if I can. And I don't care who watches with me, but I'm going to do that. And as I started to do that, some of my other lawyer friends were popping in the chat and I invited them on. Then, people liked that. And so then I would invite more of them on and it just built from there. I had no idea it would be successful at all. I figured, it'd be me and maybe 1,000 people watching this kid get, just raked over the coals by the state. But it grew and grew and grew. And a big flashpoint for that was it was me and Legal Bites and Legal Mindset. We were watching, and there's a piece of testimony that was just so good for Kyle that we all kind of reacted and said that this case should be dismissed right out of the gate. And Viva Fry clipped that and uploaded it to Twitter, and it got something like 4 million views. And that just brought a flood of people into the show because it got shared out by a bunch of big names like Pasobic and stuff like this on the sort of right-leaning side of Twitter. And that brought a ton of attention. And then more and more people just kept coming and spreading the word. And that's how it grows. But yeah, there's no plan. The plan was I'm going to sit here and watch this and it's probably going to be boring, but it ended up being a shitload of fun.
What was the most amount of viewers you had at one point?
In Rittenhouse or ever? Because I think
we'll go Rittenhouse, then we'll go to I'm sure the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial was pretty crazy too.
Pretty close. Rittenhouse, the peak was I think 127,000 live, and then Johnny Depp was like 134,000 live, something like that. So they're very similar in size, and having that many people in chat is really something else. It's impossible to keep up with what's going on. You can put slow mode at like 10 minutes. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you're dealing with the several arenas of people filled watching you talk about something, which is insane. I mean, we got 1,000 people watching right now, which is phenomenal. Which once again, I encourage everyone to hit the subscribe button if you're new. But I think it's crazy to see how people have turned to you for your opinion on these legal cases.
I do too. I think it's insane. I'm just a guy I'm just a guy who I can translate stuff and I can tell jokes and I can make fun of the fat witnesses for Amber Heard and stuff like that. But I don't know, that's it. Like, I don't claim some crazy expertise. I don't claim to know a bunch of ins and outs of trial mechanics in various jurisdictions. Like, I can tell you what my strategies are based on my experience with the human condition and storytelling, for sure. And I can tell you how I might frame an issue, but that doesn't mean it's the right way to frame an issue. And some people kind of misunderstand that. But that it's just what we do. We talk about these things, we develop opinions about them, and then we just share them. Because I'm a lawyer, sometimes people give, they add import to those words, and it's like, you can't convince people of what to do online, but that's kind of a thing that occurs. And it's like, well, and then they get mad at you if something goes like different. It's like, well, I was just sharing my opinion. It's not like this is some doctrinal thing. If there were easy answers in law, you wouldn't need lawyers. Like, if someone could just call every ball and strike from the sideline, you'd never need a lawyer because it'd be black and white, but it's not.
Right. It's always gray. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. This is a crazy. I watched the Netflix documentary about. Did you like post trials? Did you go back and watch anything about like documentaries that have been made about the trial?
No.
You lived it. You lived it.
I was there. No, the reality is, and I don't think I ever hid this. I don't care. about Johnny Depp or Amber Heard particularly. I like Johnny Depp. I think he's a great actor. I love a lot of his movies, and he was immensely likable in the trial. But like outside of that, you know, I don't give a shit about these people. They're just random celebrities. I don't like seeing people completely maligned for no good reason other than, you know, the purpose is destruction of who they are. But yeah, so I know some of my friends like that umbrella guy or whatever, they became highly invested in the topic and Johnny Depp and the people associated with him, and has even had the opportunity to talk to many. I believe he's spoken extensively with Johnny himself, like super cool. But I don't care. Like if I could talk to Johnny Depp, it'd be like, wow, this is neat. And then I'd move on with my life. It's not a big deal for me. Not that I'm important, again, just not in my realm of consideration. So I don't go back and watch this stuff. No, like I don't have much interest in the kind of mystery surrounding the events. I just cared about the trial because the trial itself was interesting. Here we are with two, and I said this going into it. I'm like, you're about to watch two of the most well-funded legal teams you can possibly imagine, and prepare to be completely underwhelmed by their performance. And I think in a lot of cases throughout the trial, both sides, you could very honestly say, well, that was kind of weak. Like in realizing that these teams are paid $6-7 million for what they did. And you're like, and that's what you got? Like that was your opening argument. That was your examination or cross-examination. That's what your expert has. Mostly on the Amber Heard side, Johnny Depp came out ahead in most of those encounters, but his team had plenty of moments where you're like, that is all you've got here? Like that is your statement? Okay.
Put this in perspective for people, because maybe this is someone I've never been to court from on a trial perspective, right? When you're dealing with a situation like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, how much money is being spent every hour per Johnny Depp, per Amber Heard, just on legal? Like, like, are they spending? I mean, I would imagine it's probably $500-600 an hour per lawyer, maybe probably more. I don't know, maybe $1,000.
Yeah, you could easily be spending on lead counsel. You could be spending $900 to $2,000 an hour, and then it goes down in rate from there on co-counsel. But each of these teams has 6-7 lawyers sitting at the bench. Mm-hmm. So if you distill it down to just go to an average rate between all of them of $400 an hour, and then you got multiply by 6. 6 times 4 is $2,400 an hour, right? And that's a low ball figure for like a Johnny Depp team. So yeah, $2,400 an hour, 8 hours a day. And that's just for trial time, not to mention any time before or after for conferences, not to mention lunch, not to mention lodging and transportation. If any of your counsel's from out of state, you're flying them in, you're flying them first class, you're putting them up in a nice place. I mean, it's unfathomable how much money goes into that type of legal team. And that's just to get a decent shot at your issue. Like if you can't afford to spend $18,000 to $20,000 a day, mm-hmm. What hope do you have?
Right, man. So there are some big trials coming up. I think most notably, probably I believe Donald Trump has some trials coming up that are they going to be publicly available? Do you intend on covering those?
Donald Trump has one trial that has been announced that it will be televised. That is the Georgia election interference state trial, not to be confused with the national election interference trials. Any federal court is currently prohibited from being recorded. That needs to be changed, but That is the current rule. That is slated, I think, for March 4th as a start date. It's right around Super Tuesday. I think it's on Super Tuesday that it starts. And if it goes to trial, I will definitely cover it 100%. Yeah. And I'll be clearing out my March to do so. I think it's a critical issue. The critical issue, though, should actually be resolved well before trial. And my legal issue hope, which has nothing to do with Trump and everything to do with what the Constitution says, is that will not actually occur. Now, my personal greed hope is that it will occur and I'll get to broadcast it, of course. But really, presidential immunity should be extended to criminal matters. It just hasn't been yet by the Supreme Court, so we need a ruling on that before we know if it does or doesn't. But it should be extended to criminal matters, and his investigation of an election and possible interference with it and possible fraud within it falls well within the purview of official acts of a sitting president. And then, of course, discussing them publicly or even privately falls well within the official duties of the president as well, because he runs the Department of Justice as part of running the executive branch. So the language of civil immunity or civil presidential immunity would suggest that if criminal immunity is extended to the president, that and done so under a similar test, that this would be dismissed well before that goes to trial. And it should be. But if it's not, oh yeah, I'm grifting the hell out of that.
Okay, let's talk about that. What is the like, you define me the word grift. What does grift mean to you?
What grift means to me is a label that was applied to me early on that I don't understand in its actual definition. A grift means to do something, I think, at least impliedly dishonestly for the purpose of extracting money. Mm-hmm. That's a grift, in my opinion. People called me a grifter for any number of reasons. I just took it as a joke because all of my grifting involved people voluntarily giving me money to participate in a show. I didn't set up like goals or awards or anything. I'm really bad at incentivizing that sort of participation. I didn't have oh, this is the amount I'll need to get my new gamer girl couch or whatever. Like, I never did any of that stuff, except for once as a joke when I did a stream on Twitch as an e-thought. That was fun for me. But other than that, it was like, I just do a show and people choose to participate or not. So I'm like in my opinion, like the worst grifter on the planet there. And some people would point to a GoFundMe that I started for a guy named Vic Mignogna. And I was accused of any number of crimes related to that GoFundMe. But the way I set it up was very specific, where I wouldn't even have the ability to have access to the money. It wouldn't pass through an account. It wouldn't do anything at all. The way it was set up would go to a very specific place, which was whatever counsel he chose. It would go right into their trust account. And then everything about that money was out of my hands. I had nothing to do with it. I just facilitated the actual creation of the GoFundMe and gave people the link, and then told people if they wanted to give to it, they could do that. Again, I don't know how that's a grift for me, since I didn't get any piece of it at all, not a penny. And I didn't have any agreement to get like a percentage. Some people accused me of that. It was like, guys, you can just look into GoFundMe's policies and how this thing is actually labeled, and you can tell that it's not going to me. It can't. And that was, I think, as a lawyer, setting it up that way was critical because of the rampant chances for accusations of abuse or the appearance of impropriety. So I don't know. If I'm a grifter, then I pity all grifters in how they do it, because there's a really easy way to grift online. We talked about tribalism earlier, and I talked about identifying markets that are used to getting rid of money at high rates. I mean, I could have easily stuck with saying a certain narrative within the anime community and made probably more than I have made so far. Like, you just can. I hate to put it that way. And I hate that people abuse that, but there's an easy way to make a bunch of money in independent comics. If you start to grow an audience and develop an audience, you can develop products and sell them to people at very high dollar rates, at very high volumes. You have a captive audience, and the entire way to manage that is just managing your audience's ability to expend on a given timeline and then catering directly to it. There's a ton of ways to strategize income in this business in a dishonest or disingenuous way. Me, I get online, I talk about stuff. And if I'm a grifter, guys, I have pissed off so many people. in the past 2 years, and I have not ever changed a perspective to try and appease anybody on those things. I just say what I say, and I say what I do. And some people are like, "You asshole," and I'm like, "Well, I
Right.
told you from the start that that's who
Right.
I was."
That's how you identify as an asshole.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the one thing you hear all that, that I've heard, right, is and hear this, he's a grifter. He's a grifter, right? And grifting, like, whether you work online or whether you work at whether you're a salesman at a bank, right? You're grifting. You're working hard to make money allowing you to do what you do on a day-to-day basis. But
don't accuse me of working hard at Wells Fargo. That never happened, not once.
But the term grift is thrown out when people don't like what you're doing. Like,
yeah,
that's the thing. You go from entertaining to look at that grifter really quick. Pretty amazing. Well, we only got a couple more minutes with you, and I appreciate your time today. Once again, I want everybody to hit the thumbs up button. And of course, subscribe if you're new. We'd love for you guys to join our little community of common sense over here. I want to talk about Rumble for a minute.
Yeah.
You signed a deal with Rumble. What does that look like?
What it looks like is I do a certain amount of shows per month, which start on YouTube and Rumble. And then after approximately an hour, we do the Rumble flip. We cut off the YouTube feed and encourage people to watch the rest of the show over on Rumble. The idea, of course, is to attract people to the platform, let them experience it and realize that there's content over there that they like. There's a bunch of other creators, and hope that they enjoy the experience enough to say, I'll come back to this platform. I like free speech, and I like the people who are on it, and I like the ideas that are transmitted there. And the user experience is good enough for it. And I say good enough very honestly, because Rumble has a long way to go to match the experience of a YouTube or a Twitch or whoever, but they are, they're making improvements. But that's basically it. It's very, very straightforward. And then, in exchange for doing that, there's a certain amount of income that I make as part of that, as any contract would have. And the big reason is because you can look at my YouTube subscriber numbers since starting that. When you stop focusing on one platform, what you're going to do is lose viewers over on that platform. And that's the exchange, knowing that my YouTube channel would suffer in the short and long term. The idea is to make an investment in this other platform, and then also, hopefully get compensated for that investment as the contract goes on. So far, it's been great. I love them. They're a fantastic company. They seem to be adhering to most of their principles. There's some things that I really want them to work on in the censorship and freedom area. Their chat still auto censors words, and I really wish it didn't. Because I just think that a critical element of freedom is the ability to let people say things that are horrible. And so I would like to see that change. But by and large, I've been able to say some of the most hilarious and awful things on Rumble, and I have never even gotten so much as a stern glance in my direction. So that alone is worth its weight in gold to me.
Did you go to them, or did they go to you?
They came to me. We were actually talking. We were in talks for a very long time about what kind of the structure of things would look like, because I'm a very cautious person who doesn't trust anybody. But we were talking before I got banned from YouTube in October of last year. And then we actually didn't. I think our deal started January of this year. So I think we signed it in December of last year. So we were talking before the ban. The ban was like this nice kick in the pants, like this could happen to you at any moment. And then, kind of after everything had gotten back onto YouTube and things had settled down, that was when the full deal was worked out, and it's great. It's been awesome.
How long is it? Is a time-based thing, an annual thing, or re-up every year, or I mean, it sounds like you're interested in re-ing up, and I don't want to dive into the nitty-gritty because it's not my business, but I am curious. Like,
I've been fairly open about as much of it. There's obviously a bunch of parts of the contract I cannot talk about.
Sure.
I will say this. There is no clause that says that I cannot say a negative thing about Rumble. I won't enter into any agreement where that is a clause where I cannot say a negative about a company, except for one, which was Raid Shadow Legends, which I did as a meme one time, because they require you to have a non-disparagement agreement in there. But I was open about that right at the beginning of the stream that I did on Twitch for it. I just thought it was fun to do a Raid Shadow Legends stream. But generally speaking, if a company says, well, we'll advertise with you or we'll sponsor you or whatever, or in Rumble's case, like we'll partner with you. If they say these are things you can and can't say at all, and specifically about us, then I'm out. Like I don't need that in my life. They've never asked me to do that, but there are parts of the contract that are under an NDA and I can't talk about, but I've been pretty open about it to the extent I can, where my contract is annual and then we'll talk again, probably leading up to January here. I would assume that talk is going to happen very soon. And then we'll see where we go from there. I have no idea.
Awesome.
So I want to obviously continue working with them. I like them. I like the freedom that it gives. And I think that freedom is critical for creators because we see what YouTube's trying to do to us on very important issues.
I don't disagree. And I'm hopeful. I'll be very upfront. I hope that we are able to sign some sort of deal with Rumble because I feel the noose tightening every day over on YouTube on things that just very basic things that are common sense items that whether it's you're talking about medicine, whether you're talking about politics, whether you're talking about whatever things that you can't say because they don't agree with it or they feel like it's misinformation or whatever, and it's scary. So, well, I appreciate it, man. We're running close on time. I know you got to roll. But I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to read these super chats after you're out, and unless I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's anything that really is. Let's see. No, I think we're good. I think we're all right. But yeah, I think there's some fun ones. Hi, Pepsi Man. I love you. I don't know who Pepsi Man is. I don't even know what this means.
Oh, I'm being sued for defamation by an internet weirdo who I relied on their 10-year reputation of being called a pedophile to call them a pedophile. And then they sued me for it. So that's a fun thing that I'm stuck in. And they're, Pepsi Man is, he's a super fan of the show. So,
okay. Good.
Yeah. He's one of my biggest hug givers. So it's always nice to see from him.
So what is like, you're getting sued right now? What does that look like? Is this a...
Give me 1 second. 1 second. Allahu Akbar.
Okay. Guys, I appreciate you guys popping in.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I do, apparently I have to go pretty quickly.
Yeah, get out of here. We'll see. Hey, thanks for your time. Appreciate you very much. Have a great day. I look forward to doing this again in the future. I'll hit you up on Twitter.
It's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the audience out there. Keep watching this show, and because we need guys like Craig here. Cool. So go get it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Nick. Have a great rest of your day, man. We'll see you.
You too.
All right, there it is. Great conversation. Appreciate you guys popping in. Nick Rekieta. Let's go and read off some of these super chats. Appreciate it. Hopefully we can bypass Nick today in total super chat revenue. Yeah, he was keeping a closer eye on the super chats in the chat than I was. I encourage you guys to go check out his channel if you haven't yet. I'm sure most of you guys watch his stuff on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's important, right? Like I go into these interviews with thinking broad, right? Because there's a lot of people, while you may be infatuated with this person, or you may hate or love said person, I go in thinking about the people who have no idea who they are. And those are questions that I tend to ask about so if I don't ask a question that you don't necessarily like, or I don't get to a question that you expect me to ask, sorry. It is what it is. I know going into these that there will be times where you say you should ask about this, and I don't. And you'll say, "Well, why didn't you ask about it?" Because it either didn't interest me, or I didn't care, or I didn't think that people outside of you would care about it. So but I appreciate you guys popping in and being a part of these conversations. Janice came in and says, I can't always watch Side Scrollers live, but I do catch up on the live shows and clips. Thanks. Also, best wishes to Trav. Yes, absolutely. Slaglust came in and says, Nick, you may Blabs, Blabs, how about you do some reading today? You want to do some reading?
Sure, from Slaglust. Nick, you white bread. Oh man, Craig. All right, fine. You white bread nigga. Miss Marvel gets her powers from the N-word ban, so stop thinking it's racist. I know what you're trying to do here.
Actually, I did not even read that. I'm sorry.
I knew what was going on here. I saw the clip of this.
I actually did not. I'm sorry, Blabs. You go and keep on going.
I did. I read that.
No, keep going to the next one. Yeah, just keep going.
Okay. Hang on. Let me scroll. I'm scrolling. All right. Next one. From Orthodox Monks. Movie quote of the day. I found this in my soup. Holds up gun. And I'm very serious. Shoots waiter. Ted P. Cool. Jude Law. Existence Z.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Orthodox Monks. Appreciate you.
Alman John 1. Yeah, Screw Attack was my favorite channel back in the day. Now Rekieta and Yellow Flash are. It's a pleasure to see my old and new favorite content creators on the same show. Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, Alman John. Well, hopefully we will slowly take over and become your new favorite show. Again.
Targo_the White. Craig, didn't you say you were trying to lose some weight? Ask Rackets to fat shame you. You won't be disappointed.
It's funny because I'm actually not streaming this afternoon because I'm going to go see the doctor. So no stream this afternoon over on the Plays channel. I'm sure they're going to tell me I'm overweight.
Okay, great. N Exerd. Craig, please ask Nick to ask you the question. Nick knows the question that needs to be asked. Thank you for that mind fuck right there. Non-pro for $1.99. Ask Nick about his time at Hedonism and the Bulls. Next time, I guess. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
New York Gamers Federation for $10. The prophecy has been fulfilled. Praise Jesus. The interview that needed to happen since the second coming of Side Scrollers. Have fun, gents. Craig, can you ask Nick to fucking call and schedule with Streeter? Yeah. Metal Burner 357 for $5. Damn it, Rackets. Bust out the military tequila and spice up this law and banking stream.
Thanks, Metal Burner. Appreciate that.
Nick Naylor for $2. Ask Nick about his crippling MMO addiction. I didn't know about that.
I'm sure it's crippling, yes.
Yeah. Darren Bennett for $5. Monty Graff was and is blank years before Nick was ever on YouTube or on any social media platforms.
Thank you,
I don't know who this person was. I was trying to Google this before.
Yeah.
Jay Bama fan has pumpkin shoulders. What kind of name is that? Do you like pineapples, Nick? Winky face, winky face. Hang on, where am I here? All right, here. Mercenary X21 for $2. Can we sue Nick for losing the Vic case, and how is he? I don't think you can do that.
No, I think once somebody's been tried, they think it's done.
Yeah. Metastep for a 3 months member. Thanks, man. At Nick, can you ask Krog balls or no balls? P.S. I like being a member here. All right, Craig, balls or no balls?
Well, I am a boy, so balls.
Balls. Okay.
Yep.
Power Keg Greg. $5. Nick may be a shyster grifter, but he's a shyster grifter, but he's a genuine, transparent shyster grifter. Keep rocking, you guys. I mean, shyster spelled differently. I'm just saying. Orthodox Monks comes back in for $5. Another good platform people should be looking at is Rofkin. I've never heard of that. Have you?
No,
Rofkin?
I have not heard of Rofkin. No.
Interesting. Pepsi Man. Did we skip Pepsi Man? I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
I don't know. Read it off. That's fine.
All right. Pepsi Man for $10. Craig, if your old friend from high school dated a mom of a 13-year-old and years later had a BDSM session with said daughter, would you feel comfortable having said friend around your kids? What?
If there's a lot.
If your old friend from high school dated a mom of a 13-year-old,
I mean,
and years later had a BDSM session with said daughter. I mean, years later than that daughter was be legal age.
Is she like 30? Like, is she?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the whole thing is fucking. I don't care. I don't care. Yeah.
Anyway, King Cracker for $5.
That may be the weirdest question I've ever been asked online ever. So
right?
thank you for that. Appreciate that.
There's like a whole bunch of context missing there. No, this on you, Craig. The one-on-ones are you learning not for you to do a DSP style thing. No one should expect you to hammer every guest like that.
Oh no! Like, and that's the thing. We need to be like people will go back to the DSP interview and they're like, you need to go. Like, yeah, I did a shit ton of prep leading up for that because it was warranted, right? And I think that if everybody who came on the show was drilled and we went in and we asked questions like we did DSP, nobody would ever come on the show. Like, that's the reality of it.
And DSP asked to be grilled.
Yes, he asked for that. Like, is it?
He
Like,
literally asked for it.
He said, "I want this.
Do it.
I want this to be the pre." He said it at the start of it. I want this to be the preeminent stop for everybody when it comes to DSP interviews. So we did, and that he asked for it. Like, nobody's like, "Hey, Craig, will you grill me?" Nope, not a single guest since then has asked that. So there you go. But thanks, King Cracker.
The Rand Man for $5. Wise men say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza. Michelangelo, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Love that. Thank you, Rand Man. Appreciate you. That's
Got
awesome.
a
We do have
couple
some Rumble rants. Yeah,
Yeah,
do you have them over there, or do you want me to get them?
I got them. All right,
Fire
let
away.
me see. So I missed Dudes, though, by putting the private chat before. Let's see. So Dude 1286 for $1 says, what is Rekieta's opinion on the word cock being a word that prevents a chat from being posted on Rumble? Why is this even a thing on free speech platform? My next 2 non-ram posts are to prove it. Okay? Thanks, dude. All right, and then Almond John.
By the way, I think he answered that as well. He said that was one of the things that he'd like Rumble to work on. So.
Yeah. Almond John for $2. Craig, tell Nick about the shady hotel you stayed at where the guy was jacking off the picture.
What?
Anyway, Dude for $1 says sometimes people just want to hear a jerk that used to be called comedy. Sure enough. All right, scrolling. I know there's someone here. There we go. Dude again says, I guess that means that Craig funathons are grifts according to Rackets.
Yeah, major grifts. Huge. Yes, I'm trying to make a living doing what we're doing. Yes, absolutely.
Daramuth for $2 says, supporting the Rumble creators. Have a good one. And I think we got everybody. Thanks,
all right.
Rumble.
Love it. Love it. Hey, guys, I appreciate everybody popping in today, your support, your super chats. I don't think we passed the all-time record that Nick Rekieta set on a live stream, but actually I will confirm we did not. But either way, appreciate you guys popping in, allowing us to do fun interviews like this. We'll be slicing this up and putting it up in multiple questions and parts on the channel over the next couple weeks or so. And but we got a lot of good stuff going on. Tomorrow is going to actually be a really, really fun show. Marcus Cyborg will be joining us, as well as one news we haven't had a chance to talk about is the Escapist firing and having their entire gaming content team fired and let go and quitting. And they started a new company. Well, that editor in chief of the new company may be joining us tomorrow. So so we had a lot going on. It's gonna be fun tomorrow. We'll dig into that. And yeah, man, great stuff going on. Appreciate everybody popping in. Thank you so much, Chancho, for being a member for 12 months. Once again, no live stream this afternoon as I'm going to the doctor to get the old heart checked out. Well, you got to do this. You got to have an annual checkup, Labs.
Yay!
That's good. All right, let's get out of here. Appreciate you guys.
We got one more from Chenka. Just dropped $5. Can you ask about the Vic stuff? That is where I found him. Nick's not here anymore. Sorry. I think he's probably on replay somewhere, delayed an hour or so.
Yeah, for sure. But appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for your support. Have a great rest of your day. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Spread the word. Let people know there's a place for common sense in the video game and entertainment world. You guys remember, people are going to try to keep you down. Don't let them. You guys got that goal. Go get it. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.